The mist rolled through the narrow lanes of Willow Creek, soft and deceptive, cloaking the perfect suburb in a fragile calm. Emily Foster's trainers tapped lightly against the pavement as she jogged past the sleeping houses, her breath visible in the early chill. She'd left the kettle half-filled on the counter, a small habit that would haunt the investigation later. Her husband, Daniel, waved from the doorway, cup of tea in hand. The image of domestic peace. By midday, that image had shattered. At 11:32 a.m., Daniel Foster dialed 999, his voice trembling in carefully measured intervals. "Daniel, my wife went for a run this morning and hasn't come back. It's been hours. Please, I think something's happened." Dispatch noted the distress. But when the recording was replayed, there was a stiffness in his tone, a precision that didn't fit the panic he claimed to feel. Detective Inspector Grace Harlow was first on the scene. A calm presence with eyes that missed nothing. She walked through the Fosters' neatly kept home. Nothing was out of place. The bed made, a single mug in the sink. Emily's phone charger still plugged into the wall. Her running shoes were gone, but her keys and handbag sat untouched. Neighbors gathered outside as police cars arrived, the flashing blue lights reflecting in their curious eyes. Most described Emily as kind, quiet, the type who baked for the block. But under the surface of sympathy came the whispers about the arguments late at night. The sound of glass breaking, the bruises Emily claimed came from bumping into doors. Daniel gave his account twice, both times nearly identical in detail. He'd been at home when she left, showered, and then headed to work. Yet when Harlow asked what Emily had been wearing, his confidence faltered. "Harlow, you said she was in her blue jacket?" Daniel, "Yes, I think so. Or maybe gray. She has so many." The slip was small, but Harlow filed it away. In her experience, the truth never needed rehearsing. By evening, volunteers searched the nearby woods. The air turned heavy, the light fading into the kind of dusk that carried dread. Inside the Foster home, Emily's phone lit up on the counter. Daniel calling. The screen glowed, unanswered, before the light died again. When Harlow reviewed the 999 call later that night, a single phrase made her stop the tape. Daniel had said, "She always comes back." His tone was wrong, not hopeful, not uncertain. It sounded like a man reciting something he already knew wasn't true. Detective Grace Harlow had seen husbands like Daniel Foster before. Clean-shaven grief, ironed shirts, the appearance of control masking the rot beneath. He sat across from her in interview room 3, a sterile box humming under one flickering fluorescent light. His tie was slightly loosened, not out of fatigue, but precision. Enough to look vulnerable, not enough to lose composure. His story was rehearsed to the minute. "Daniel, I left home just after 8. Emily was still out. I assumed she'd taken a longer route. I got to work by 1:15. Logged in, had coffee, routine morning." He spoke with the rhythm of a man reciting lines. Grace nodded, let the silence stretch, and slid a printout across the table. It was a digital log from the architectural firm where Daniel worked. His security pass had not been used until 9:47 a.m. "Harlow, you said 1:15? "Yes, that's right." "Harlow, then why's the system showing nearly an hour and a half later?" A twitch in his jaw betrayed him. He leaned forward, forcing a half-smile. "Daniel, our scanners malfunction all the time. It's been meaning to fix them." Harlow didn't respond. She watched his eyes, the brief flicker of calculation. When he wasn't speaking, his face was perfectly still, like a mask sculpted to mimic sorrow. Later that afternoon, she walked through the firm's open-plan office. Daniel's colleagues were sympathetic, but their words painted an odd picture. "He was quiet that morning," one said. "Came in looking pale. Didn't talk much." Another added, "He didn't bring his laptop. Said he left it at home." The inconsistencies multiplied. Grace could feel the false calm vibrating under his timeline like a fault line about to split. That evening, she called him back for clarification. "Harlow, you mentioned calling Emily at 8? Daniel, "Yes, straight to voicemail." Harlow, "Phone records show your first call was at 10:15. Why lie about something so small?" The silence that followed filled the room with tension sharp enough to taste. Daniel's gaze dropped to the table, his fingers tapping once, twice, then still. Grace stood, gathering her notes. She didn't press further. Some lies revealed themselves best in silence. Hours later, officers searched the Foster bedroom again. Beneath the bed frame between the floorboards, they found a phone. Emily's? Battery dead, screen cracked, the wallpaper still showing her smiling face. Detective Harlow sat alone in the evidence room, the hum of fluorescent light filling the silence. Emily Foster's phone lay on the table between her and the tech specialist. The cracked screen flickered once before revealing a string of unread messages. Among them, one contact appeared more often than any other, a name saved only as L. The messages were intimate, coded, and emotional. Words like, "You deserve to be free," and "He can't own you forever." Harlow knew what that meant. This wasn't just a friend. It was someone who knew Emily's fear before anyone else did. Hours later, officers searched the house again. Hidden behind a loose panel in Emily's wardrobe, they found a small leather-bound journal, its edges frayed and the ink pressed deep from a heavy hand. Harlow read in silence as the words unspooled a private torment. "He watches me when I sleep. I wake up and he's just standing there, smiling. He says I forget things that never happened. I used to think love was safety. Now it feels like a locked door." Emily had written about control disguised as affection. The dinners planned without her input. The way Daniel corrected her mid-sentence during gatherings. The constant insistence that everything was for her own good. The diary's final entries spoke of another person. "Lena makes me remember who I was before him." The name was now a trail. Police traced the number to a flat on the edge of Brighton, where a woman in her early 30s answered the door. She had sharp features softened by exhaustion, and eyes that carried the kind of grief that doesn't fade. "Lena, you found me sooner than I thought." "Harlow, we're looking into Emily's disappearance." "How did you know her?" "Lena, she said she was leaving him. Friday night. She promised she'd call me when she was safe." Lena described months of late-night calls, whispered confessions and bruises Emily covered with concealer. The two had met at a charity event and kept their friendship quiet. But it had deepened into something else, something Daniel could never have understood. Harlow looked around Lena's flat, photographs of Emily pinned to a corkboard, small reminders of moments no one else knew existed. The detective's voice softened. "Harlow, did she ever tell you she was afraid for her life?" "Lena, every single day." As Harlow prepared to leave, Lena reached for her phone, showing the last message she ever received. It was sent at 6:42 p.m. the night Emily vanished. The text read, "He knows. I have to go now." The morning broke cold and gray as uniformed officers swarmed the Foster property. A week had passed since Emily's disappearance, and public sympathy had curdled into suspicion. Neighbors lined the pavement, murmuring beneath their breath as cadaver dogs padded across the frosted lawn. Daniel Foster stood behind the yellow tape, his arms crossed tightly, the perfect image of weary cooperation. Yet Detective Harlow noticed how his gaze never lingered on the ground, only on the faces of those watching him. The dogs began circling near the back fence, tails stiffening. Their handler called out sharply, and the team moved in. Shovels pierced the earth, dull thuds echoing through the silence. Within minutes, one struck something solid. The sound rang like a verdict. Officers knelt to clear the soil by hand. Out came a small metal box, its surface rusted, corners sealed with tape. Harlow crouched beside it, gloved hands steady as she pried it open. Inside, wrapped in a plastic sleeve, were pieces of a life paused mid-motion. Emily's necklace, her wedding ring, a folded letter sealed in an envelope marked, "If something happens to me." Daniel's expression flickered just once when he saw the handwriting. He pressed a hand to his mouth as if swallowing something heavy. Harlow's eyes never left him. Under the harsh glare of floodlights, the letter unfolded. The ink was faintly smudged, but the message was clear, the words trembling across the page. "If you're reading this, I didn't leave by choice. I've tried to make him understand that love isn't control, but every time I speak he listens with anger instead of ears. I've hidden this so someone will know the truth if he ever says I simply ran away." A murmur rippled through the onlookers as Harlow read aloud. The final line stopped her cold. The signature wasn't what she expected. EF and L. Harlow glanced toward the streetlights, their pale glow catching the outline of Daniel's rigid posture. She had seen the same look before, the the silence of a man whose secret had just been unearthed. The letter went into evidence, sealed and logged, but its weight lingered in the air. The discovery came from a simple banking trace. Detective Harlow leaned over the forensic accountant's shoulder as he pointed to a recurring withdrawal. Small sums every month, transferred to an account under a name no one recognized. David Flynn. A search through property records led to a flat in the south of London, registered to that alias. The team drove there at dawn, rain streaking the windscreen as city light broke through the mist. The door was answered by a woman in her 30s with tired eyes and a child on her hip. Harlow. I'm Detective Inspector Grace Harlow, Metropolitan Police. Is this the residence of David Flynn? Woman. Yes, but he's not here. He said he'd be gone for work a few days. Behind her, photographs lined the hallway. Daniel Foster smiling with 2 children, a little girl clutching his hand. The man who claimed to be shattered by his wife's disappearance had been living a double life. The apartment was immaculate, almost sterile in its precision. A stack of school drawings signed Daddy rested on the mantelpiece. In the bedroom, officers found men's suits identical to the ones Daniel wore to every police interview. There was no sign of Emily, only a life that had replaced her. By noon, the revelation tore through the media. Television screens blared Daniel's photo alongside the headline, "Architect's Secret Family Exposed." Neighbors who once defended him now recoiled, and reporters camped outside the Foster home. When Harlow questioned Daniel that evening, his composure fractured for the first time. Harlow, who is David Flynn? Daniel, it's not what it looks like. Harlow, then explain it. Daniel, I had reasons. You wouldn't understand. He sat forward, eyes narrowing, voice sharp with resentment. The calm, grieving husband was gone. In his place was something colder, more deliberate. Harlow, Emily found out, didn't she? Daniel, she was never supposed to. She didn't know how to stay quiet. Those words hung heavy in the room. When investigators examined Emily's laptop, the truth deepened. Her browser history showed desperate searches in the weeks before she vanished. How to file for divorce secretly. How to hide money from a controlling partner. How to track someone's location. It painted the portrait of a woman on the edge of escape, and a man whose control was slipping. That night, while Harlow reviewed the footage from the apartment, her phone rang. It was the woman from Daniel's other life, her voice shaking. Woman, I think you need to hear this. I haven't seen him since the night Emily disappeared. The walls around Daniel Foster's story were closing in. Detective Harlow sat in the operations room, the glow from multiple monitors casting long shadows across her face. A timeline stretched across the whiteboard. Each movement, each minute of Daniel's morning mapped out in cold precision. Yet one gap remained like a black hole swallowing reason. 90 minutes. Traffic cameras told the truth Daniel never intended to reveal. His silver Jaguar was captured not heading toward the city, but veering off the main road toward the disused quarry at Ashcombe. It was a forgotten site, overgrown with nettles and rust, a place locals avoided since the flood 20 years earlier. A search team was dispatched at dawn. As the machinery roared to life, water was drained from the quarry's surface, the gray murk receding to reveal a graveyard of twisted metal. The air hung heavy with diesel and dread. Then a shout broke the stillness. Officer. Something here, ma'am. Harlow stepped forward, the mud sucking at her boots. A fragment of red fabric clung to the jagged edge of submerged steel. She crouched and lifted it carefully, the soaked material tearing slightly in her hands. It was the same deep crimson as the jacket Emily wore on her morning run. Forensics confirmed the texture and brand within hours. Daniel's alibi was gone. When they brought him back in, the calm veneer had vanished. He sat in the interrogation room under the same flickering light that had witnessed countless lies. His eyes were wild, his tone brittle. Harlow, your car was seen near the quarry. 90 minutes unaccounted for. Explain that. Daniel, you think you know everything? You don't know what she was capable of. Harlow, what did she do, Daniel? Daniel, she ruined my life. She made me a ghost in my own home. His fists clenched, knuckles whitening as his voice broke between rage and despair. The words tumbled out like a man trying to rewrite history before the evidence finished writing it for him. Harlow watched, impassive, her reflection visible in the glass behind him, calm against his unraveling storm. She knew the truth was close, and Daniel knew it too. The DNA report arrived that evening. The fabric from the quarry matched Emily Foster's blood and skin cells, but as officers prepared to file the confirmation, another piece of evidence came in from forensics. The rain came down in relentless sheets, the kind that blurred everything: the road, the truth, the faces behind glass. Inside the station, Detective Harlow watched the forensics report print line by line, the ink bleeding slightly on damp paper. The blood from Daniel Foster's car wasn't Emily's. It belonged to Lena Ward. A chill swept through the room. The woman Emily had trusted most, the one whose name appeared again and again in her diary, now tethered to the same evidence that condemned Daniel. When officers finally found Lena, she was hiding in a rented cottage near the coast. Her hands trembled as she opened the door, eyes sunken, breath shallow. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, or hadn't stopped looking over her shoulder. "Lena, you think I'm hiding from you?" "I'm hiding from him, Harlow." "Daniel?" "Lena, he came to me after she disappeared. He was different, empty, said I'd turned his wife against him. Then he smiled and said, 'But don't worry, she's not coming back.'" Her words struck like a hammer against the illusion Daniel had tried so hard to maintain. Back in the interrogation room, Daniel sat in silence. The once calculated calm had decayed into something erratic. He was sweating despite the cold, eyes darting between the detectives and the tape recorder. "Harlow, we've got Lena's statement. The blood in your car, the quarry. It's time to stop pretending." "Daniel, pretending? You think you can understand what happened in that house?" "Harlow, then help me understand." For a long moment, only the hum of the fluorescent light filled the air. Then Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and raw. "Daniel, she wouldn't stop. Always pushing, always watching. I lost control. She fell. It wasn't supposed to happen." He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. The tape kept rolling, capturing every broken syllable. But when the autopsy results arrived, Daniel's version of events collapsed again. Emily's injuries told a different story. Bruises on her forearms, fractured ribs, a blow to the head delivered after she had already fallen unconscious. This wasn't panic or accident. It was rage, deliberate and sustained. Detective Harlow replayed Daniel's confession that night, the rain hammering against the window behind her. His words no longer sounded like remorse. They sounded like performance. The next morning, Daniel's lawyer stormed into the precinct, waving the confession transcript. "Lawyer, this entire statement is inadmissible. My client was coerced. You've built your case on air. For all you know, someone else put that blood there." Winter settled over Willow Creek like a final exhale. The leaves were gone, the search banners faded, and the town that had once whispered in corners now spoke only in quiet glances. For months, the case had stalled in courtrooms and evidence labs, but Detective Harlow never stopped pressing. Every detail of Emily Foster's life had been picked apart, yet something about that buried box still haunted her. Then one cold February morning, the call came from the forensic unit. "Technician, you're going to want to see this. The partial prints on the jewelry box aren't Daniel's. They belong to Claire Bennett, Emily's younger sister, the one who had stood in every interview with shaking hands, clutching tissues, defending Daniel as a good man who just broke under pressure." Harlow found Claire in her small flat above a bookshop in Bristol. The woman's eyes flicked nervously toward the window before she spoke. "Harlow, we found your fingerprints, Claire. You want to tell me why?" "Claire, I wasn't helping him. I was helping her." Harlow, "Helping her what?" "Claire, leave." Tears blurred her mascara as the truth spilled out. Emily had come to her 3 weeks before she vanished, terrified. She said Daniel was tracking her phone, checking her accounts, following her to work. That night, they packed a small box with the things Emily couldn't bear to lose: her wedding ring, a few photos, and a letter in case something went wrong. Claire buried it behind the house before dawn, promising not to tell anyone. She had no idea Daniel was watching from the window. The revelation shifted everything. Emily hadn't disappeared out of guilt or confusion. She had been trying to escape a man who believed she was his possession. The trial drew crowds from across the country. Daniel sat at the defense table, face hollow, his lawyer's words echoing through the courtroom about reasonable doubt and emotional provocation. But the evidence told its own story, the false alibi, the secret family, the quarry, the blood, and now the sister's testimony that shattered the last mask he wore. When the verdict was read, the silence was heavier than the sentence itself. Judge: Daniel Foster, you are hereby found guilty of second-degree murder. Lena sat at the back of the room, her hands trembling as she unfolded a small, creased page, Emily's final journal entry. Her voice cracked as she read it aloud. If I disappear, don't let him tell my story for me. The courtroom lights dimmed as cameras flashed, freezing faces in a moment of justice that came too late. Weeks later, Detective Harlow closed the case file and placed it in storage. But one photograph stayed on her desk. Emily's smile, fragile and defiant, caught between fear and hope. The final scene fades to an old home video. Emily on her wedding day. Laughter bright and alive, her veil caught in the wind. The image slows, then dissolves into black.